This is the Lou Rockwell Show.
How great to have with us this morning Mr. Gerald Clente. Jerry is president of the Trends Research Institute, editor of the Trends Research Journal. Take a look at his website, trendsresearch.com. Jerry is his own man, very outspoken, always interesting to listen to. We can learn a lot from him even when we may disagree. Gerald, you have a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom to tell us about the economy. What the heck is happening right now?
Well, right now we're still in recession. And all of the stimulus packages, all of the financial drugs that they've been pumping into the system is making it appear as though this chronic disease is being cured, but it's really not. And when you look behind the numbers and why Wall Street's going up, it's quite obvious. We have firms such as Starbucks and Caterpillar and others showing better than expected earnings because their cuts are bigger than expected. They're saving money, they're cutting back on the workforce, and they're showing better losses. That's all it is. And in the banking sector, of course, we know what that is, and it's essentially our money going to bail out the bankers and them washing the money and showing profit. So this is only a temporary remission, as I said, and the worst is still yet to come. You cannot save an economy by printing phantom money out of thin air, based on nothing, and producing practically nothing.
Well, Gerald, I guess we could say that they've spent, what, $2 trillion, or maybe it's $11 trillion to have increased the stock market by a couple of thousand points in the Dow. But it hasn't done much for the actual economy. As you say, we're still in a recession, and they're papering things over a little bit like Franklin Roosevelt and Herbert Hoover did, but it didn't work then, and it's not going to work now.
No, and it's a global meltdown, and that's what people really need to understand, Lou. When you see what's happening with China, for example, with their massive stimulus package, now the numbers are up to almost $1 trillion US. And what has it done? Well, it's temporarily boosted their economy, and they're, of course, in better shape to do it than we are because, of course, they have a trade surplus. We have, $700 billion in the hole each year, and they have budget surpluses while we're over $11 trillion in the hole. But even with what they're doing, their exports are off 23%. Those are Depression-era fall-offs. If America doesn't consume, China doesn't grow. Period, paragraph. And then we look at the other numbers that are liars' numbers and how they're being interpreted. Let's look at the recent unemployment numbers. They came in lower than expected. Only 250,000 people thereabouts lost their jobs, and they applauded because it wasn't 275,000? That's sick humor, and that's what Wall Street is doing.
I noticed that they were saying also don't worry about these unemployment numbers because there are a lot of people who are just going into the discouraged worker category and aren't bothering to look for work anymore, and so that's not really a problem. But, of course, this is just a Clinton-era finagle in the figures to take people artificially out of the unemployment rate. I mean, if the discouraged workers were included, we'd be, far higher, 15%, 16% unemployment rate.
Well, actually, when you look at the effective unemployment rate, when you add in people that are no longer looking for work, those that are off the rolls, those that are looking for work and can't find any, and then add on top of that the people that are working part-time and want full-time work, and we have an 18.7% effective unemployment rate.
Recently somebody said to me, do you think we're going to have as bad as a time as the Japanese recession? And I said we'd be lucky to have the Japanese recession because, of course, the Japanese people save so much more than we do, and the Chinese people save even more than the Japanese people. So they've got those kinds of cushions, and here when all of a sudden Americans are starting to save a few percent, the Keynesians are crying doom and gloom, but the rest of us know that while this is better than zero, or some minus percentage figure, still nowhere near what, in a healthy economy, Americans should be saving.
Exactly. Exactly, and they're really not saving it. It's not as though this money is going into the bank and going to be spent in the future. It's going to pay off the $14 trillion worth of consumer debt out there. And so this is a fake number as well, and as you well point out, it's well below the averages going back into the 50s and 60s. People ask us, Lou, how can we get out of this? And they say that, we point out the problems. What are some of the solutions? We can say what the solutions are after having examined the problems as long as we have. The solution is let Wall Street fail. It's a fallacy that this country needs Wall Street. And that's not hyperbole. We need Main Street. We don't need Walmarts. We need mom and pops. And we don't need factory farms. We need family farms. Again, this isn't rhetoric. It's fact. When that was the model of America, back when many of us were growing up, I'm in my 60s, we were the most egalitarian nation on earth, bar none. We were the envy of the world. Now the gap between the rich and the poor is the widest in the United States than any of the industrialized nations. The wealth of the nation is going to the too big to fails. The concentration of wealth is before us all. For us to turn around this country, we have to let these giant too big to fails fail and let the slack be taken up by Main Street, by community banks, and by the strength of the states of the nation, not of Washington.
Gerald, when we hear all this about concentration of wealth, of course it's a matter of the state getting richer, the industries and special interests connected to the state getting richer, whether it's Goldman Sachs or whomever else. Of course, as you point out, at the expense of the